Morning, Dr. Rao. You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right on. Good to be here.
Same here. Let me. Start sharing. Okay, can you all see the slides? Perfect. Okay. Thank you for joining the webinar. This is the second talk. It's on the political aspects of the change that's going to happen. And right, so last month we talked about the climate healers hypothesis. And today it's going to be the political side, making America brave again. I'm just taking something from the popular lexicon and modifying it to what needs to happen. So let's get into it. Now, the recording of all the past webinars will be found at climatehealers.org/webinar. So you should see the recording of the first webinar we did last month. And once this is over, I will post this as well on the same page. So this becomes a repository of what we are doing here. So there'll be a total of 6 webinars, and one every month. So the next month will be on social, and then ecological, spiritual, and finally is the economic. Now I want to acknowledge a couple of people who have been critical for this work that I'm presenting today. First is Jean-Francois Nobel, who has worked on collective intelligence for a long time. He's an expert on that, and he's also one of the philosophical minds behind Holochain, the Holochain and the Holo platform. So it's a platform for agent-centric computing, which I think is critical for the transformation that is going to happen. So I'm going to take a few things from him. And then also I want to acknowledge Dr. Shelley Ostroff, who has done some tremendous work on eco-governance. So I'm going to be talking about the Vitality Code that she originated. I mean, she came up with that idea. And you can see her work at togetherincreation.org. Now, how do we realize a vegan world by 2026? This is a great exploration. And this is the last great exploration on Earth. This is what Robert Swan said. The last great exploration on Earth is to survive on Earth. And I'll show you why this is such a unprecedented transformation that's happening in our lives. And we're really fortunate to be alive at this time so that we can participate in this. And the second quote down there is from Valerie Kaur. And so she has this beautiful TED talk where she describes childbirth. And she says that the darkness of the tomb is also the darkness of the womb. So we think we are going through so much suffering and feels like you're almost dying, but in reality, you're giving birth to something new. So we're in that process of negotiating the womb as we are born into this new mode of living. So the stark choice that we have before us is continuing what we are doing and go extinct, which is the carnist, sticking to the carnism that we've been brought into, or we evolve and create a vegan world by 2026. Now that evolution is actually an unprecedented transformation that's happening. Because in nature, if you look at animals, animals are either predator or prey. Or a combination of both, predator and prey. Now, humanity, Homo sapiens, I mean, we have gone through two stages in the past. We were mostly prey to begin with until we harnessed fire and we harnessed our minds and we created technologies and weapons, and then we started becoming predators. So for the past 50,000 years, I would say in the current form as Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens, we have been the top predator on the planet. So the transformation that's happening is going from a predator species to a caretaker species, which is a new kind of species that has never been seen before in nature. It's neither predator nor prey, but a species that takes care of all other species and all life on Earth. So this transformation is what Jean-Francois Nobel calls going from Homo sapiens to a Holo sapiens. A Holo sapiens means becoming whole again, becoming aligned with who we really are. So that's Holo sapiens. Now the 7 core shifts that are going to happen, that's already beginning to happen, and you can see that in our daily lives, is listed there. The first is to go from a system of normalized violence to a system of normalized non-violence. Normalized violence, today, we kill more animals in 4 to 12 hours than all the humans that died in wars throughout human history put together. That's that frenzied pace of killing that's happening today. So that's the normalized violence. And in fact, it's considered so critical to the economy that governments throughout the world are actually subsidizing this violence. They even go to the extent of subsidizing meat and dairy industry, even when the demand is dropping. Okay? But the transformation from a system of normalized violence to a system of normalized non-violence is like a birth. It's unstoppable. It is happening and it's going to happen. And so you may wonder, can we continue this transformation if the government is not supporting it? And that question has come up on some of my Facebook posts. And I can say to you that in the limit, as if everyone around us has gone vegan, how can a government sit there and continue supporting an animal agriculture industry that's doing nothing for the public? So at some point, they will have to stop. There is no way for them to continue this. So this is the first core shift that's going to happen, going from a system of normalized violence to a system of normalized non-violence. And then you can break that down. For animals, currently it's mostly death and cruelty. This is what we deal to the animals today. And instead, we are going to move to a system where we are normally showing love and kindness for animals in our daily interactions, so that the animals begin to feel like they can trust us. They can trust this species that they have been so fearful of so far. And it's also going to result in a change in the way we experience life. In the current system, we are being farmed to contract chronic diseases, and then the pharmaceutical industries come along and they give us pharmaceuticals to fix our chronic diseases or to manage our chronic diseases. And the goal there is basically, to extract money from us. So from disease to health and from division, so we are now being divided up into various categories, and we are made to fight each other and compete with each other based on the color of our skin, our gender, national origin, national identity, you name it. So we're being divided up. It's a divide and conquer type of system that we are in. So from that, we're going to transform to a system where it's unity for humanity. And for the planet, it's going from destruction of the planet to regeneration. Okay. And all this is happening because we are now in a system of where scarcity is valued. So we basically have a scarcity mindset. Because if something is scarce, then it is very valuable for us. Okay. So we have a tendency in the system to create artificial scarcity so that something becomes valuable. So from that scarcity mindset, we are transforming to a system with an abundance mindset, where we naturally create abundance, or we tap into the natural abundance that's around us. That's not to say that certain minerals have become scarce because of what we have done to the earth, and that we'll have to manage that in the future as well. But I'm saying that in general, the artificial scarcity we'll overcome, so that we don't artificially create scarcity where there was none to begin with. Now, all of these things are happening because we have a money-driven system. It's a system that turns everything into a single number and values that number. And so even lives become numbers, and our health becomes numbers, and everything becomes numbers. And instead, we'll have a service-driven system in the future. And in the current system, we are all treated as consumers. So that is the major aspect of our lives, a major aspect of our activities that everyone else around us is interested in, that we are consumers. So we have a push-driven system where producers create products and then they push it on consumers. And that's our primary function in society, to consume. Instead, we are going to become givers in the new system. So it is the opposite. Instead of push, it will be a pull-based system where we list out the needs and someone says, oh, I can meet that need, and they give to you. So we'll automatically become givers, and you'll be treated as givers as opposed to consumers. So this, in a broad sense, are the 7 core shifts that will take us from a Homo sapiens to Homo sapiens, or from a predator species to a caretaker species. And this is the evolution that we are called upon to do. Okay. Now, this is nothing new. I mean, this is something that Gandhi wrote about in 1909 in his book, Hind Swaraj. And this book came out in 1909, and it was banned by the British government in India at that time. And it became an instant bestseller, and everybody read it. Everybody translated it into every Indian language, and it became very popular. And that's how Gandhi became very well known in India. Until then, people really didn't know who he was. And Gandhi actually listed all of these characteristics of the way we do things, how we deliberately break things and fix them, how we deliberately make people sick and then fix them, how we deliberately create fights and friction among people and then have lawyers jump in and try to address that. So he wrote several chapters in this book on these aspects. So I'm just drawing on that. And so it's the same problem that we still have. And even in 1909, Gandhi had said that this particular way of doing things is not sustainable. So eventually we're going to destroy everything and then come to realize that we can't continue. So some details. So this is a really nice picture that shows this shift from a normalized violence to a normalized non-violence. As how, it's about war and violence and making people sick and then fixing them with drugs and, basically forcing people to do things that they don't want to do. And so that's what we are in now. And then we are moving to a system where we are free to do what we want. We are free to contribute our gifts in any way we want. Okay? So that's the view, that's the vision as to where we are headed. And for the animals, it's death and cruelty to love and kindness. And it's fairly easy to understand. And it's natural for us to be loving and kind to animals. And today we are being forced to treat animals as objects. And disease division was transforming to health and unity. Here is a billboard from London, which has been doctored by activists to show McDonald's burgers and how eating processed meat causes cancer, which everybody knows. McDonald's knows, governments know, and yet they support this industry and they promote it in our schools because it's about making money. So even our children are being used as money-making objects in the current system. And for the planet, it's destruction to regeneration. And this is what I talked about last month, where you see how much the climate change can be reversed, biodiversity loss can be reversed, and the planet can literally heal, just like a human body heals when we stop eating animal food, stop eating all these carcinogens and these toxic foods, and start eating foods that are good for us. So when we truly become non-violent and in alignment with who we really are, all of us, when we do that en masse, then the planet itself begins to heal. And we can actually quantify that as well as to how much it'll heal. And moving from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. In the current system, if you have an abundance of something, say, here's the first article I showed there on the left, where in 2015, there was a potato glut in India, and farmers were committing suicide. Potato farmers were committing suicide because the prices of potatoes plummeted, and so the farmers could not even repay the loans that they had borrowed to grow the crops. And because they couldn't repay the loans, they were committing suicide. So that's one kind of a scarcity mindset. I mean, forcing artificial scarcity on something that's naturally abundant. And the second is the GM genocide that's happening in India. I mean, when India opened up the economy to the West and got loans from the IMF, one of the conditions they had was that they had to allow GM crops to be tested in India. So BT cotton was introduced in India, and that's created, it's caused thousands of farmers to commit suicide. So in contrast, in an abundance mindset, we celebrate abundance. I mean, we actually want abundance. So we are trying to create abundance as opposed to committing suicide because you have too much potatoes growing in your yard. So finally, transforming money-driven economies to a service-driven economy, where basically everyone is trying to contribute and serve others whether it's other animals or the planet or other human beings, we are serving um, as opposed to working to get money, okay, which is what we have today. If you don't do the work that people with money have asked you to do, then you won't get any money and therefore you won't be able to eat. That's the system we have today. So instead, I think money should be something that that is taken out of the picture so that we can truly contribute to the fullest extent that we have and what we are capable of giving. And finally, going from consumers to givers. So this is the illustration of that. Now, the three core gifts that we have that we can give today to make this transformation happen. I'm putting it in the vegan flag, the three core gifts, because the vegan flag, the colors, the blue color on the left and the right represent the animals in the ocean and animals in the air. So that's the sky and the ocean. And we represents the human beings, and green represents all the animals on land. So the way it was explained to me, this we human beings are protecting the animals on land. That's why they are within in the flag. And they are dependent on the animals in the ocean and the animals in the air. So that's why they are kind of outside the we. And the we is white because we live a peaceful life. So that's white represents peace. So that's the color of that's the vegan flag. And in that I'm saying, changing the narratives and myths. This is one of the three core gifts that we can give today. Changing the stories. So changing the story to that of the thermostat species, that of the caretaker species. And then rewriting all of our stories to be non-violent. And not normalizing the violence, but normalizing non-violence. So that's something that we can all start contributing today. And that will change us within, from within. And so that is why I put that in the middle. Because this is about changing who we are within ourselves. And this is changing who we are from outside us. So shedding our predator role, so which is shedding the old ways of doing things which were based on normalized violence, so shedding the predator role. And this involves actions like, asking the government to stop subsidizing animal foods and start subsidizing plant foods. Because, hey, the government is supposed to be taking care of us and not trying to kill us, right? So actions in that realm fall into the second category of shedding the predator role. And this also, is asking Sierra Club to start having a public vegan policy, or asking 350.org to be open about the impact of animal agriculture, because right now they don't even talk about it. Or Climate Reality Project, they don't talk about it. So these are the kinds of actions that we would do that I would classify as coming into the second category of shedding the predator role. And the third is building or birthing the caretaker species. So it's about creating all the collaterals we need for becoming the caretaker species. So this is figuring out how do we make decisions in the new system? How do we contribute? And how do we know what to do? So building the tools that we need for people to live in the new world. So these are the three core gifts that we can start giving today to make this transformation happen. And I put that in the vegan flag because I think veganism is going to be the fundamental building block on top of which all these other things are built. So how to birth the caretaker species? I think the most important thing we need to be working on is the right tools. And Buckminster Fuller said that. He said, if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them a tool, the use of which will lead to new ways of thinking. What he meant by that is, if people are given the right tools, automatically they will start doing, following what the tool is asking them to do. So currently we have a money-driven system. We have a system of normalized violence. So it automatically bubbles up people who have less and less empathy to the top of the power structure. And so it doesn't matter who's up there. If you say that that person is bad, I'm going to replace him and put him another person over there, that person will also be like that. So it's a very systemic problem that we face. So therefore, we have to create a new tool which will change the way people think and allow this new way of living to blossom. And again, so it comes to the vitality code that Dr. Shelley Ostroff has written about. So the vitality code, again, can be broken up into three. So it's the two items in the blue are what we do to the outside. So we receive all that we need. So receive all that you need, and then you give all that you can. And so everybody can give all that you can, and everybody can then receive all that you need. And when we start doing this, the goal is to make sure that we give more than we receive on the average. So this is how the earth will become green again. Okay, the earth will start healing again, because we as a species then become net givers as opposed to net takers on the planet. And in the process, within ourselves, we will become all that you are. Each of us will become all that you are. So this is a simple code that every other species in nature follows. And this is how nature works. This is how nature manages its infinite complexity. And still, life flourishes within that infinite complexity. And so we need to become part of that as well and to follow the same vitality code. So this will be the core this will be what is embedded in the tools that we have to create to become the caretaker species. Now it takes courage to do this. Imagine the first fish that walked out on land and said, I'm going to start being outside this water. So every species has explorers who have the courage to try new things, and has the conservatives who stick to what they know, who don't like to change. And every species need both. There's not that the conservatives are bad people and the explorers are good people. We need both of them. We need both. And as the explorers go and build out the new way of living, eventually the conservatives will come along, because that becomes more of the normal. Okay, but it takes courage. And one of the great things that happened over the last 2-3 centuries is that the explorers of our species started congregating in different places. And America was a place where a lot of the explorers congregated. In fact, this is why I immigrated to America, because I was really inspired by John F. Kennedy and the moon landing and the work that NASA did to make this happen. Because I felt like, oh, this is a place where things get done, So I came to work at Bell Labs here, and then I worked on the internet. And again, I felt that spirit, the pioneering spirit of America. And we are being called to do the same thing again in creating the infrastructure for the new system of normalized nonviolence. If America takes a back seat and says, we don't want to do anything about this, we want to just hunker down and protect what we have already stolen from the world, then this is not going to happen. So we as Americans, and it's not going to happen from the leaders in this case, unfortunately, unlike the moon landing, which was due to President Kennedy's leadership. But this time it's going to be the people of America who have to lead. So I say, this is why I say, make America brave again. Make America get that courage to take that step, to work on this new thing. And we really are the ones we've been waiting for. We cannot expect our leaders to take leadership on this because they're stuck in the old way of doing things. And they are leaders in the old system of normalized violence. So you cannot expect them to become leaders of the system of normalized nonviolence. It's up to us to actually distribute this work and get it done. So this campaign, the $1 Million Vegan Challenge, we heard back from Pope Francis that he's not going to do it. I mean, he just sent a non-response response to Genesis Butler. So basically indicating to the rest of us, don't expect leadership from the current crop of leaders. Just do it yourself. And the changes we need to make in the political arena, from governance for economic growth to governance for ecological thrivability, from concentration of power to distribution of power, and from representative democracy to participatory democracy. This is just broad guidelines as to what these changes are, but it has to be an open source discussion that we all engage in to figure out what this new system of governance, how decision-making processes are going to be, and how we manage our common requirements, needs, how we meet our needs, and so on. So we had all the political shift questions. So this is basically about shedding our predator role. And so these are the questions that we came up with during the Vegan World 2026 conference in Mesa. And that's up on our website, veganworld2026.org. And we also now need a tool that allows us to continue this dialogue among all of us around the world. And so create forums, where we can thrash this out. So here are the new model questions. This is birthing the new caretaker species. Anyway, you can find more facts at climatehealers.org facts, and my books are online, so you can read them for free. Carbon Dharma and Carbon Yoga, and you can always email me if you have any questions later on. And now I'm going to stop talking and let you ask me anything, and let's start a discussion.
Hello, Dr. Rao.
Yes, Miles.
Is my audio okay?
Yes, perfect. I can hear you.
Very good. I have a couple of questions, but I will ask them one at a time, so to let other people. First of all, I've moved to telling people that we are in an ecological emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Just today, I noticed on YouTube, some people called Friends of Science are casting doubt on climate change or global warming. And they come up with their excuses, such as carbon dioxide is good for plants, things like that. So to engage these individuals in civil discussion, I'm thinking ecological emergency is a better term, because we have, if somebody wants to argue about CO2 is good for plants, okay, we can discuss that. But over here, I think it's pretty obvious that we're seeing a dramatic decline in insects. So regardless of whether we're going to try to figure out who's to blame for CO2 emissions, whether it's man or nature, we still have something obvious that I think is presenting itself, and that's this dramatic decline in insects. So first of all, the concept of ecological is a word. And what about emergency? Is it wise to confront people with emergency, or is that going to turn people off, or do we need to motivate them with a word like emergency?
Yeah, this is a tricky situation, because you're talking about at the same time, you don't want to scare people to the point where they shut down and stop doing anything, right? So it is a birthing process. We are birthing something new. And there is a lot of pain involved in the birthing process. And there is a lot of trauma. There's a lot of, crazy things happening around you. But we need to focus on the light, that's where we are headed, right? So this is why the stories that we tell are very important now. It is an emergency. I do use that, that we have been given a choice, go extinct or evolve. And you can argue, no, it's not as bad as going extinct right away, but to me, if we get to a point where we wiped out most of the biodiversity of the planet, and then every one of those species was doing its role in the ecosystem that we somehow have to compensate for if we want to keep this going. And most of them, we don't even know what they were doing before we wiped them out, right? So this is why it's urgent to tell people that this is an emergency. But at the same time, we have to tell the story of the birthing. So that's the fine line that we have to walk. Yeah? Thank you.
Dr. Rao, I'd like to ask you a question here.
Sure.
First of all, I saw something earlier that said you could raise your hand to indicate you had something to say, but now I can't find it. Do you know how to tell people how to do that?
I'm sure there is something in Zoom.
Okay, well, I don't see it anymore, but so anyway, I love your ideas and everything, and because of you, I'm almost totally vegetarian now. I'm getting really close. I'm not there 100%. I don't know if I'll ever go 100%, but so I wrote the Road to Life plan, which is a comprehensive plan that basically describes how mankind can do all things at the same time. But we need a plan. We can't do all this stuff unless we have a comprehensive plan that tells us how to do everything. I mean, there's more than just becoming vegetarians. There's, learning how to live, how to grow food. What are we going to do when the lights go out? What if the lights go out just because Wall Street breaks down? I mean, what are we going to do? Does that mean we have to end our lives? No, we have to transfer into another type of a life, but we don't know what that type of life looks like. So as you've been on the Social Club at the End of the World, we've been talking about building a platform where everybody could come, including you and groups like yours, and participate in building this plan that would be built in virtual reality. And then everybody be able to go through this platform. And you mentioned coming together and talking about this. Well, one thing about this platform is it would have a place for people to come and talk that would use software we use to break the language barrier. Mm-hmm. So anybody can talk face to face, and there's automatic voice translation. So I mean, to try and tell people that they have to change has not worked in the past. But if we build a place for people to come that want to help build this vision, it seems like that's a really good way to go, because that becomes a process of attraction rather than promotion. Does that make sense? Absolutely.
I mean, that's the way forward, you know, where people can come and participate in their own way and give their input as to what they like, what they don't like about what is being, and then modify it as we go along. So we can co-create this new world that we are going to live in. I mean, it literally is about, you know, it's creating something new, and it's creating something that our children are going to look back on and say, that was awesome that happened, right? So, and we don't want to leave a legacy of destruction for our children. No, for sure. Right. But so, right now, people have lots of ideas all over. And all the ideas are just spinning in circles because everybody tries to do them for themselves. You know, you look at all the environmental groups. Well, the problem with all the environmental groups and all the environmental movements is they're not organized together. If they were organized together under one umbrella, they would become much more powerful. So if we build a platform on the internet for how to save the world and have everything organized through there, and that's where the collective intelligence comes in. And we have the modern technology, we have the internet. The internet is the only way that mankind can talk to each other. It's the only way we can all gather together in the same room and talk. So I think we need to take advantage of that. Yeah, absolutely. This is why this is the right time to do this platform. This is the right time. Gandhi could not have done it 100 years ago. He tried, but he couldn't have done it. So we are at the right time in history to build this new thing and help every one of us make this transition. Now, I really think it will eventually be a system of normalized nonviolence, because violence is not sustainable fundamentally. So even though we are all making this transition, and we may feel like we'll never ever get there, but please keep at it. I'm sure you will keep improving day by day or year by year. You know, Henry Ford had this beautiful saying. He said, if you think you can or you think you cannot, you're usually right. Yeah, Zig Ziglar has a beautiful saying. He says, there's no greater error than to do nothing because you think you can only do a little. Right. Rebecca, you had your hand up? You're probably on mute.
Hello, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I went to an Extinction Rebellion meeting last night for the young people are planning to march on March 15th at the Capitol here in Texas and around maybe the world.
Uh-huh.
And there were about 25 people there, and what the person who was giving the presentation, he said he didn't mention animal agriculture. When he talked about methane, he said fracking. And I said, and animal agriculture. And he said, yes, that's true. And so the tendency for the group was, the way I read it, was that they knew that going vegetarian was good, and people said they were trying to do that, but they didn't know very much about just how incredible it would be, and that it can bring down so much carbon and sequestration and all that. So, so I left information, but I know they're enthusiastic to learn. But what do you recommend about that group in particular?
Well, raising awareness, working with them is always important, because those are the people that we are trying to reach. People who know that there is something wrong, who are trying to do something about it, right? And so helping them connect the dots, and especially giving them this new the story of the birthing process as opposed to extinction. Because even though even this series, I called it How Not to Go Extinct, and I debated about that, but I was thinking that it will attract more people if I had a negative title like that. But it probably didn't serve its purpose. I don't think I attracted more people. But yeah, it's birthing something new and telling them the story of this birthing process. Right? It's important.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Rao. So I write about in my Road to Life plan. I write about one of the things I say that part of it's a comprehensive plan. So one of the things I say in there is that we're going to have to go vegetarian, and I describe how something happened to mankind. I mean, anthropologists tell us that that the Homo sapiens originated out of Africa 300,000 years ago. So if you look at the timeline of the population of the Earth, you see that for 300,000 years, the hunter-gatherer people lived in harmony with the Earth. And then all of a sudden, we went through a transition, and all of a sudden our mindsets changed, and then we started overpopulating the Earth, and the population went up like crazy. So it happened suddenly. I mean, when you compare 300,000 years to the 5,000 years since we've become civilized, and we see that ever since we've become civilized, we've destroyed everything. I mean, it's like there's something happened to the mindset. Well, I think that part of that something that happened was when we left the Garden of Eden, or we left our lives as hunters and gatherers, we started planting and herding. And when we started herding, and Joseph Campbell backs this up, when we started herding, we would make friends with the animals and then kill them and eat them. And so our mindset changed, because when we were hunter and gatherers, which we never compare back to, we always compare back to pre-days of civilization. We never talk about our ancient hunter gatherers. Well, they didn't. They respected life, So before they would go on hunts and stuff, they would talk about the animals they were going to kill. They would, pray and ask the animals to let them kill them. And they would bury the heart next to them. They would, as a offering to them. They had great respect. But after mankind started herding animals, we lost our respect for them. We turned them into money, is what happened. And that's where the money began, was when we started turning animals into dollar bills. I think that because that's where we started wealth started happening. It was before there was gold, it was the people with the most animals. And so that's what I think. I think it's that money, the animals were the first form of money. That's why we have the stock market and stocks and bonds, and you know.
Right. I mean, these are stories that we tell, explaining what has happened to us. You know, so the all I'm pointing out is that it also had this positive aspect of preventing the Earth from going back to another ice age. So we prevented the ice age from happening by doing that accidentally. Of course, we didn't know that's what we were doing. And then in the last 200 years, we have pumped up so much fossil fuel-based carbon into the atmosphere, so that now if we bring back the forests that we cut, we still won't go back to another ice age, because all that carbon from fossil fuels will still be up there. So in a way, we have done something that's good for us, and now we have to just acknowledge that and tell this new story and move on. That's what I'm trying to do. Yes, Sangeeta, you had your hand up. Are you on mute? Yeah.
So I try to be short. I have a YouTube channel called Secret Planet, and in that I have put forward a couple of theories. One is that a lot of our problems are because of what I call as an identity myopia, which is that instead of looking at ourselves as a species that has evolved over millions of years, we have these little identities as whatever your country, whatever your religion is, and that's what is what disconnects us from our true identity. And the second point I have made on my channel is that there is one thing that could drastically reduce the human population, and that is gender equality. If we get the birth rate can be reduced, if women have more equality opportunities and they have a say over their own reproduction, then we can reduce our population. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts are.
You're absolutely right. I mean, see, all of those issues that we have been dealing with separately all have to be addressed in one shot when we make this transformation, so that gender equality is guaranteed, you know, so unity and equality are guaranteed no matter who you are, no matter what color you are, no matter what gender you are. So it's literally like building an utopia, but why not? I mean, why would you, you know, I'm a designer, you know, when I design something, I don't design with deliberate flaws in it, you know? So, so why not design something that has no flaws to begin with?
It all depends on how much time do we really have.
Yeah, we have, well, we don't have that much time, but we have a lot of people. So we have a lot of manpower that can be brought into this, or women power can be brought into this. And you're also right about the identity myopia. That brings up the spiritual aspect of this transformation. So our new movie, A Prayer for Compassion, we show that, you know, every religion talks about compassion for all life as the foundation of that religion. So it really is in alignment with who we are, you know, throughout the world.
Thank you.
Yes, Miles.
Dr. Rao, I really love the flag for your organization, Climate Healers, with the blue. The white is like hands. And the color white is, you said, is peace. And it is actually all colors of the spectrum in one, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a beautiful concept. One of the things I'd like to mention, you had Buckminster Fuller with his geodesic dome. I remember back about 35 years ago, I lived in Nelson, British Columbia, and there was a vegetarian restaurant. I don't know that it was vegan, but it was vegetarian at least. And it was the most delightful restaurant. And there's something very clean about a vegetarian restaurant too. And you actually feel healthy after you've had a lunch there. Sadly, he had a hard time. It wasn't, I think he was ahead of his time. But
Right.
I'm very involved with learning more about the local Indigenous people, the First Nations, here in Treaty 7 in Alberta, Canada. And some of them don't even have a word for sharing or please, because that's just the way they were. They just lived the way you're describing. I'm not romanticizing them. They're just human beings too.
Right.
But they did have a sharing economy.
Right.
And one of these fellows from Saskatchewan, a First Nations young man, he was talking about geothermal greenhouses. And just thinking, well, why not have geothermal greenhouse cafes? There's nothing more beautiful than being inside the rich atmosphere of freshness of a greenhouse. And if it was a cafe, a vegan cafe at the same time, wouldn't that be a wonderful place to have your meal? Thank you.
Absolutely. It's like that would be, we also have a goal to turn every slaughterhouse into a greenhouse eventually. And yes, and make it a memorial for the animals. Well, thank you all so much for this great discussion. And I'm going to repeat this again in the evening at 10 o'clock our time. And please let others know that this discussion is going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. From Judy. Bye.
Hi. Please feel free to send me any questions by email if you have any. Okay? Thanks.
Will do. Thank you.
Bye-bye.